Hello, everyone. Good morning if you're on my side of the world. Good afternoon if you're, I think, in sort of the Europe, Africa, sort of that part of the universe. And good evening to you if you are in Eurasia, or sorry, Asia or Australia, Australasia, I guess. I see several people starting to come into the room right now, and I'm really excited to be presenting this October session of our AI and Learning Summit. You can see our three speakers for today. Markus Bernhardt, Edie Kirkman, and John Fila today. It's going to be a great session overall. My name's Laddick. I work for this company right here, OpenLMS. And I just want to take a few minutes, like we always do, to welcome everybody into our session today. If you have, if you're able to, if you're not driving, if you're not in a quiet room or in a busy office, take a second and go into the chat. If it doesn't matter where you are, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on YouTube, and actually we're broadcasting on Facebook right now too. If you're on any of those channels, go into the chat over there on the right-hand side or in the bottom, and tell me where you're from. I already saw Shelly is in Atlanta there. Thank you very much for chiming in, Shelly. I really appreciate that. I also saw some people over in the Discord starting to chime in as well. But this is where this is your opportunity to interact. This is your opportunity to join the conversation, talk about your experience with AI and learning, talk about how it's affecting your classroom, your training session, your your company, your organization. So very excited. And William, thank you very much for coming up from Saipan. Nice. So on the other side of the planet, I love it. I still, I've been on the earth for way too many decades already, and I still get excited seeing, this particular thing about the interwebs that, I'm here in Mexico City right now, and, here I am, we're going to have a live conversation with people from Atlanta, from Saipan, from Colombia, from other places right now. So as the room fills up, please do let me know where you're calling in from where you're dialing in from. Can I say those things? I don't know. It's an AI conversation and I'm referring to dial up. So that's great. Here's what we're going to do today. I am going to just share my screen really quickly. Shazam, you can see it here. For those of you who are new, who haven't come to a session, if you go over to elearnmagazine.com/AIL calendar, obviously you're here because you've signed up. This is where you're going, this is where all of the great stuff is happening. If you're here, you're already watching this session. But today we're going to look at, this is Edie Kirkman. She's going to be talking about up-leveling your understanding around the world of AI. It's a great foundational understanding kind of presentation, looking at, how AI is interacting with the world, how AI is interacting with the education space. And you're going to enjoy that. The conversation by Markus Bernhardt, who sorry, I apologize. I'm going to go back up and properly introduce Edie. She's the VP of Digital at Focus Brands. And so I just wanted to properly introduce her, even though when we kick off her presentation, we'll also be introducing her. The second person I want to introduce you to is Markus Bernhardt. He actually has a fantastic profile. He's very well known in the AI space. And someone, who he just makes AI a thing that is accessible, very, 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 very accessible to everyone. But you can see here, he's a fellow of the Learning Performance Institute. He's affiliated with things like the Forbes Technology Council, the HBR Advisory Council, and the Learning Development Accelerator as well. And he's going to talk about the most important things to understand about AI. And we're going to go through a series of questions, basically a framework that he developed with a woman named Paige Chen, about what questions should you be asking as you're bringing AI into your institution or bringing AI into your company. And then finally, our third presentation today is John Fila. He's an award-winning educator, author, and curriculum coordinator. I loved recording this conversation with him. I loved having him be a part of this. He has such deep, tangible, real-world experience in the classroom. Most of his experience comes from sort of the K through 12 universe. And it's just absolutely fantastic because he's able to bring that reality to this conversation, and just gives really, really practical, not only advice, but also, clear next steps about what you can do and how you can do it. He's also a great forward thinker. He's written 3 books on AI and education already. I see him he's already in the Discord as well. So if you want to go start chatting with him right now, he can do that. And then speaking of which, let's actually look at that. So you were just looking at our calendar page where, you actually have access to all of the presentations. Actually, I'll put that up real quick just so you can see as I'm scrolling through all of the presentations that have already happened. Here's Kirsten Fraley from September, Shovik Paul from July, Joe Pringle from our June launch, etc. They're all there. You can push play right now and go through these. This is a public facing website right here, so you don't have to have an all access pass for the next 24 hours or so. You can check any of these out. I guess the sad news here is that there's so many of them, right? We've got, I think it's 36 presentations up here now. All of them are absolutely fantastic. But you can go over there now and check out whichever ones you want and follow along. While you're doing that, again, I see more and more people are coming in. Before I go to my next kind of piece here, please, if you're on YouTube or if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Facebook, it doesn't matter where you are, introduce yourself. Right now we have Shelly and William and Monica who have introduced themselves from Saipan, Atlanta, and Colombia. I see we can actually see how many people are in this chat. Tell me where you're from. Are you joining from the United States? Are you joining from Latin America? Are you joining from somewhere in Europe? Are you where are you? So just so that we can kind of see the global community that's interested in this conversation. Next, I want to, I'm going to show you where we want you to interact, right? So, obviously, join us on, join us in whatever, if you're on LinkedIn or if you're on YouTube or Facebook as well, put it in the comments or tell us where you're from. But now you can see on my screen right here, or on the screen here, is our Discord. So we wanted to offer the opportunity to become a part of a larger community that's actually interested and engaged and asking questions and providing solutions around artificial intelligence in the learning space. And so this Discord server has, several hundred people in it already. More and more are signing on right now in order to be a part of this. And throughout the presentations today, over the next 3 hours here or so, we're going to be having the opportunity to interact with each of our presenters. So you can see here on the left-hand side here, it says presenter question and answers. So this is where you're going to be able to talk to John Fila, Markus Bernhardt, and Edie. And the good news is because it's a Discord server, because it's, it's not necessarily, the comments that are, on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, it's there for the duration, right? So it's there as a legacy piece. And we've had this since June. There's been a ton of great conversations. If you go over and look into the resources channel, you can see you can go up. There's a ton of resources that our speakers have shared and different comments about how they work, what works well, what maybe doesn't work so well. We also have some off-topic conversations, especially Chris. He loves to put those out there. I love that. And so come over, join us on the Discord server. I'm going to throw up that onto the screen right quick. And the way that you do that is by going over to, we'll have to take that one down. Thank you very much, Chris. If you go over to elearnmagazine.com/AIL Discord, again, elearnmagazine.com/AIL Discord, you can jump in. It works just like Teams or just like Slack or, just like any other sort of messaging platform. You have some people we've heard, have said, wow, this is a new thing. It can get a little confusing. We wanted to do it in Discord because we felt like that was connected to the community around artificial intelligence a little better. So there you go. But come over, join us at elearnmagazine.com AIL Discord. And I'll be showing that again throughout the morning here, I guess my morning, throughout the summit this morning. The last thing before we jump into the presentations here, I want to share with you is right here. And that is, I'm going to bring it up onto the screen. And that is our all access pass. So those of you who've been here before know that right now, at this very minute, inside what we call our all access pass vault, all of the presentations that we've had in the past, but also the ones for today are available. So if I go here and I click on Edie, here you go. Her presentation is available and it's there for forever. So if you buy an all access pass, you can see if you buy an all access pass, you can get access to all of these presentations right now, and they stay with you. The better part is you also have access to all of our e-learning success series presentations from 2022, 2021, and 2020. So we're talking like quite literally like 150 presentations about how do you create engaging, impactful online learning outcomes, right? So I encourage you to come over at any time if you go over to that calendar page, you'll be able to see how to sign up for the all access pass, or I'm sure you'll get an email or two from me about doing that as well. Again, I see a few people, more people are coming in. I know the room continues to grow, which it's very exciting. Please, whether you're watching on LinkedIn or on Facebook or YouTube, throw into that chat there. Tell us where you're from. And also, feel free as we're going along to put your questions in there or whatever. Our first presenter today is Markus Bernhardt. And so without further ado, I want to get Markus on the stage. So I will see you over in the Discord. But I look forward to your presentation, or look forward to your participation. Please ask questions along the way. But here we go. Hello, my name's Ladek, and I'm the Principal for E-Learning Advocacy at OpenLMS. The presentation you're about to watch is one part in our AI and Learning Summit. I encourage you to check out all of the talks in this series as we discuss the tools of today, the near and not so near future, and the challenges we need to address around these new technologies. Our expert for this session is Markus Bernhardt, recognized as a fellow of the Learning Performance Institute and affiliated with organizations such as the Forbes Technology Council, the HBR Advisory Council, and the Learning Development Accelerator. Markus is a recognized authority, author, panelist, and speaker in the global learning and HR community. Recently serving as chief evangelist at Obrism on the vendor side, Markus has been at the forefront of combining cognitive science with digital learning, transformation, and AI. Prior, Markus held the CEO position at 2 education institutions in the UK, backed by an extensive leadership background, serving in executive and non-executive board roles. So please join me as we welcome Markus on the main stage for his presentation titled, "The Most Important Things to Understand About AI." Hello, Markus. Welcome to the AI and Learning main stage. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for having me on.
So much. We have had presenters from literally around the world. Like we've had Bali, we've had South Africa, we have Europe, we have, parts of Latin America. I know that you are not originally from where I think you are, but where do we find you sitting today?
I'm sitting in Silicon Valley right now in the center of the US tech world. But nice. The last time we spoke, I was in Cambridge in the UK. So always been looking forward to returning onto the show.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I'm going to pull up your slides. You can see them. We're all good?
Yeah.
All right, take us away.
Fantastic. So we discussed what would be a really interesting thing to talk about today. And for me, it's the most important things we need to understand about AI, or what questions should we be asking about AI solutions and tools in order to inform our decision whether we're using the right tools and what performance to expect from them. Where is the hype versus where is the reality? And so I've based this on the 5 questions inspired by an article that I've just recently written together with Paige Chen, 5 questions to ask AI vendors and how to understand the answers. That article, you can find that over at the Learning Guild. It is more written towards that process, but everything fully applies to anyone who's utilizing these tools generally. So hopefully this is going to be a useful walkthrough as we go through the 5 questions. And let's start with question 1 on the next slide. And the first question is, what type of AI is actually being deployed? And we know the hype has been around the generative AI, But there's also a lot of non-generative, good old-fashioned AI, as we call it, or machine learning, as many of the technicians still call it. So what type of AI is being deployed? And the differences here are, on the left-hand side, we've got the very well-structured AI that looks at the data, does analytics, looks at patterns, looks at statistics, and analyzes and works with the data, finding the structures therein, but not creating anything new as such. So non-generative AI use cases would be content management tools that take e-learning content, traditional good old e-learning content, and, for example, takes all the slides and all the videos and all the materials and maps them into a framework of a curriculum or of a course, for example, or maps them to a set of skills. That would be a fantastic example of non-generative AI. Other examples are career pathways, learning recommendation engines, adaptive learning engines. And for example, there's a lot of skills talk out at the moment, skills framework mappings, creating the content fitting into those skills. That would also be a non-generative process, i.e. a content management tool, so to speak. And then we move to the generative AI section. That's where, out of the data, we're creating something completely new with generative AI. That's what the AI hype has been about. Those are the large language models, the Claudes, the Llamas, the OpenAIs, the Bards. Those are the large language models and chatbots and search engines that we can now utilize that don't just give us the data back or finding patterns within that data. No, they summarize things, they write new text, they create new things. Or another example of generative AI are, of course, the image creation, DALL-E and Midjourney. There's been a lot in the news about those as well. Or, for example, for audio creation, we have the 11 Labs as an example. And so it's very interesting and key here for us to understand when we're using an AI, is it a non-generative AI model or is it a generative AI model? Because they come with different strengths and weaknesses and with different requirements in terms of training.
One question for you before you move on to question two or go deeper is, one of the things, another track that we have here at the summit is the challenges around AI. And we've seen a lot of the discussion around challenges related to generative AI, but I'm kind of actually surprised. It's blowing my mind right now that I really haven't heard a whole lot of consternation or challenges around non-generative AI, which are things that I would say we're used to. They've been in our lives longer. Has that been your experience as well, as you've worked with clients and you've kind of been, talking around the industry as well? And if so, why do you think that might be?
Non-generative AI is a little bit more straightforward. We usually have a very clear use case. We have a clear set of data that we want to work with, and we apply machine learning to it. The machine learning helps us find the patterns and give us the answers that we're looking for. That's a slightly more straightforward process, and it's much better controlled. Whereas in generative AI, we're giving it data, but we don't know until we've run some tests where with that data it will take us and whether that data is enough. So that's where the good old hallucinations with chat models and large language models come in, where when we ask it things that are in abundance on the internet and where the training set is good, then we get really good answers from it. But when we ask it something on the fringes of knowledge, something that is very new and very recent, for example, then we know that large language models don't just say, sorry, I don't know that. No, large language models, just like your friend who has to give an answer and can't appear dumb, they will come up with the next best thing. And that's what we called hallucinations. So that's why I think there's been much more a topic around the generative AI, because it is far more a question of the AI and you journeying into the unknown together. Whereas with non-generative AI, we journey into the data set and we can find what's there. And if it's not there, we won't find it. But if it's there, we will find it. That's much more nicely ring-fenced.
Thanks. Awesome.
Great. Question 2. And P.S. When you're asking what kind of AI is being deployed, please also be aware a lot of solutions are currently touting that they've got AI in there, and actually it's just plain old algorithms. So not even traditional machine learning. So we have to be really careful there as well, and with our questions can dig deeper. But question 2 will then also aid this understanding and will reveal such things when you're looking into tools that you want to use, and maybe you are talking to vendors. What data is it trained on, and what data does it have access to? So what was the training data? Was it sufficient for the task at hand? We've just said large language models. There, the internet is full of things, especially, as I tend to say, for matters that high school essays are made of. There we can get fantastic answers, and that's great. But what kind of a use case are you looking at? Are you looking at a use case in your organization with your products and services and clients? That might be a very specific subset where such an engine isn't strong, because that engine doesn't know the intricacies of your products and services, for example. For generative AI. For non-generative AI, we still need to know, does such a solution need access to our own data for additional training? Or is the solution ready to go? And so that is the starting point. Does it need additional training data? And is there enough data available is the second one. In generative AI, large language models again, there we would need to see if we were training something with our products and services, or for a help desk that's very specific to our organization, then we need to see, have we got enough training data available? Do we have a range of questions that have been answered by an expert, and we like those answers that we can upload? How many do we have? What's the variety of the questions we tend to get? Are there any areas that are really business critical where we have to really make sure the data is strong? That's an additional question about the data. And in an organization, is enough available that we can deliver the results later with the solution that we're looking for? And last but not least, another data question: where is the data stored? So is the data stored just internally on our system behind the firewall, or does the data go up into the cloud? That is a really key question, especially for those organizations working with particularly sensitive data. And solution providers are now much more open with the answer to this question. People are also better trained and better informed. Sure. Everyone had to go through this training journey, right? Salespeople weren't automatically AI specialists, even if they work for an AI company. So we're getting more information generally there. And there are more and more solutions that allow you to keep your data behind your organization's firewall, but there are also many who still require to be uploaded to the cloud. That answers then the data question. And that brings us.
So before you go to number 3, a question for you in that the second subset of questions about, does it need additional training and is there enough data available? I think most people who we've had in the summit here, either the experts, but also people who are in the audience, an understanding of, is there enough data available? I think that's pretty straightforward. The training part, though, I'm interested to hear your experience thus far, because I'm thinking of the institutions of higher education that I come in contact regularly, or even training departments at some pretty sophisticated corporations and whatnot. If I were to say that to them and say, hey, you guys have to do some additional training before this will work, blank stares. You know, they wouldn't even, like, what's the lift to actually understand how to train AI? Or is that something that's coming with the tools that you've seen or the implementations that you've seen?
Great question. And I'll jump, because that's actually the next question that we have here. In question 5, who will have access and control over the tools enhanced by AI? So a real question, that's why you're getting blank stares, is around the interaction. First, who interacts with the AI is, of course, a user-based question. For a chatbot, the user is obviously those who interact with the AI. Sure. But of course, we also need to know, how would training the tool work? Who can run the updates on the training as they become available within the organization with updated data? And who controls the training set? Do we need to go to customer success and customer service involvement of the provider? Or is this something that we can do ourselves via a dashboard? Is it accessible? Do I need a specialist behind the scenes? Who can access these elements? Are there safeguards in place? Are there different types of users, like an admin who can make changes themselves, etc.? Tools are now developing very quickly, and of course, user friendliness is really key. And so many of these tools are saying, no, you can make updates and upload additional data yourself. This is something we as people need to also start becoming more comfortable with. You don't need to be a programmer. If you say, I've got another 5 fantastic examples here, I would upload them to the training set. You can do that automatically. But then there are other things still going on, like maybe some fine tuning and some testing. Mm-hmm. And so you're absolutely right with the blank stares. With every tool and every specific use case, these are the questions we need to have answered and we need to dive into. How autonomous are we, or how reliant are we on customer service from the organization that is providing the tool? What can we do ourselves? Where do we need help? Absolutely key.
Well, I'll take you back to question 3 there. As you're going back, like the thing that's going through my mind as well is, for any one tool we just now described, or you just now described, literally, like a million unique versions or variations on that tool as it's trained with different data for different organizations. Incredible myriad, right? It's a prism, right? It's this incredible prism that is just like, whoa. Every time I have these conversations, blows my mind a little bit.
And it's really key here to keep this general, because the listeners work in different areas. They work in different organizations in different roles, right? Someone in education, someone in L&D, someone in HR, someone in corporate training, someone working for a provider of professional training services. Those are all different use cases. They will all look at different tools and different uses of data. Mm-hmm. But right now, although this seems like a really new topic and a myriad of things, I think once you start thinking about it, and once you maybe reflect on these 5 questions a little bit, and maybe after listening to this, go and have a look at the article and remind yourself of some of the points, I think we'll very quickly understand better the jargon and the map around AI, what questions we need to ask, why we need to ask them, what the answer means. It's not actually rocket science. I think we can very quickly get our heads around this, especially in terms of the role and the responsibility and job that each of us is doing in our own world.
Fantastic, thank you.
And question 3, what are the strengths and the limitations of the engine? So every AI engine, be it generative or non-generative, has strengths and weaknesses. And so GPT, for example, is really strong. And GPT is really strong on knowledge-based things, like the biology Olympiad. The marketing engine at OpenAI has taught us very well, this thing can ace the biology Olympiad. But they don't tell us, but we can look at the materials, that it completely underperforms on mental models based on mental model-based questions in the physics or chemistry Olympiad. These systems have no understanding of what they're actually covering. They are basically predictive text on steroids, and the system doesn't even know what topic it's talking about. It doesn't even know what a word is. It is just predictive text. And so when you're talking knowledge-based stuff like the biology Olympiad, the system and the knowledge engine is very strong. But the physics and the chemistry Olympiad, they usually give you a little scenario, and that little scenario will come with 2 or 3 elements and a little bit of logics around it. And then they pose a question on that scenario. That little mental model that maybe an 11-year-old can build really simply, even in their head, the large language model can't build. And so here, we need to know of the strengths and weaknesses. And the same goes for image generation models, right? We know the Midjourneys and the DALLs out there that are generating images for us, and they're getting better and better. But once we're working with them, we realize very quickly that there are limitations in how specifically I can ask for something, especially when, for example, it's around text. If I want a special text to appear somewhere in the image, then we realize that it's often misspelled, or it's a completely different word, or it didn't work out at all the way we were doing this. That's because the system is just generating an image from the prompt. And other images may have had text in them, but that's not transferred as a string of letters that retains its meaning. That is transferred as part of the image. So the solution might not even know that it's just taken bits from a different language and added it to the image. So here it's very key that we understand a little bit of the strengths and weaknesses and the limitation of the system we're working with. Those were all examples of generative AI. And in non-generative AI, we also need to be very clear that if we want to find patterns and make predictions and refine our strategy when it comes to internal data that we're utilizing for our business, for our organization, maybe learner data for improved learner journeys, it is very important for those systems that the data is very clean, that we've got data management processes in place, that the system doesn't change the words that we use to label certain things and patterns and data all of the time. So the data cleanliness discipline is really key here for those kind of systems, whereas in large language models, for example, it's not as important because large language models can infer between two different words that mean roughly the same thing in the dictionary. And so a key question there, what are the strengths and what are the limitations of the engine? The fourth question in the article is, how is the data ring fenced? And there's also no real reason to have a slide for that. We need to realize in the system, how is the AI utilizing the data? Now, that generally sounds like a mysterious question, but what I mean is, we know that ChatGPT doesn't use your conversation to train further. You can say to it, I like that answer, or I didn't like that answer, and that helps the fine-tuning, but none of the content of the conversation will actually be utilized to train the system any further. So we're past that time where if I say to the system, I'm friends with Stephen Ladek, then it remembers that we're friends. No. Mm-hmm. If I tell the system that, it doesn't remember that at all. That information will just go the moment I end that conversation, and it will definitely go the moment I delete my chat.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right? But it's key here to know that the system is learning from whether I give it good or bad feedback to an answer. That's great. That's fine-tuning of the model. But we know that the data is ring-fenced. That is not utilizing that to train the set as it did in the early days. And that was a huge concern when the first users jumped on just after it came out. It was utilizing everything that was in there. And we saw that can lead to real concerns and issues. Now, we now know that our data is ring-fenced, and that's now a relatively easy topic. But if an organization is coming in to do a learning journey with a learning path on a specific topic in your organization, then yes, you want your learning content ring-fenced. You don't want that to go out to anyone else. But then we also know, and I don't want to get political, but we just need to be aware of these things so we can ask those questions and put the right safeguards in place. The organization might be utilizing the general learner data to improve learner journeys generally across their platform for all their clients. And there might be organizations that say, that's fantastic, yes, please, because it makes every learner better. Of course, we would like that. But there might be organizations that say, no, we want that ring-fenced. We're not comfortable with that. We want our 650 learners to go through this journey. And yes, you can utilize their data to improve maybe the adaptive journey of the 650 first, but we don't want anything to leave and go anywhere else, even if it's anonymized and all of those good things. So that's what I mean with ring fencing. It's not just about, does the AI learn directly and is my data safe? But it's also such examples as this one, where is the organization using a broader data set somewhere else? And
Right.
then these conversations we need to have. Where is the data ring fenced? Up to where can the AI utilize it when it goes to the next person, to the next organization? And what aspects can transfer across or not? And like I said, I'm not going to get political here. I think
No, sure.
I think a learning portal that improves learner journeys in an adaptive learning journey, there is a reason to say, yes, wouldn't it be great if generally everyone can benefit from the amount of learners that have gone through this, and realizing what types of learners who have pre-existing knowledge, which paths work better for them, because they already know certain things. So the system might learn that if they know topic A and B already, it's much easier to do D first and then jump to C. People progress better and get a better understanding more quickly if we do it that way around. Or you find out, no, the way we've designed it with C coming first is better. There is a huge case to say, no, if we're interested in good learning, that kind of data should be utilized. But still, for some organizations, that is data, and that should not be shared in certain cases. So
I can see that,
how data is ring-fenced is really a conversation that we need to get much more used to, and that comes in many different colors and fashions in terms of how AI can or cannot utilize data, and the differences between generative and non-generative AI there are particularly huge again as well. It's much more easy to have the data ring-fenced and to run a local instance of an AI when it's good old-fashioned machine learning that just utilizes your data set and no other data set ever in the history of that model. Whereas if we're training on top of generative AI, that model has to have a general set of training already, and then we train it on top with what we've put in. So how many routes are there to the general engine where the general engine is still learning is then the question in generative AI.
I have a question that I want, and I don't have any other way to describe this other than I'm thinking of Star Wars right now. So follow me on this.
I'm with you.
But I'm also thinking of automobiles, and here's the reason why. So, and the only reason I'm thinking of Star Wars is because it was as I was on an airplane trip, this last weekend, it happened to be there, and I said, oh wow, this will be nostalgic. I'll watch it. And I noticed that in that movie, as we see in many science fiction things, there's a whole lot of different assistive technology in terms of bots and robots and things that help along the way. But then to bring in the car thing is, there's the old model car, there's this year's model car, and then there's the model of the car that those ones that you see at the show. It's like they're not going to develop this thing in mass production for 20 years.
Yeah.
Talk me through how we're thinking around the tools, or if I'm somebody who's considering this for my school or for my department or whatever. How do I know I'm not getting a clunker? How do I know that I'm not getting something is there a question to ask that would help me understand, hey, is your model competitive with someone else? Or is this, are you future forward? Are you future ready? Those kinds of things. Or is that even a question we ask yet? I don't know.
You can ask the question, and you probably should. The question on top of that is, are you going to get a good answer, or is the organization just going to say, yes, we are forward thinking, we are,
of course, man, ready. Of course,
this is the solution out there, there's no one better than us. But the point you're making is a very good one, because this field is moving super fast, and it's the first time that we've had such a fast moving technological field with so many different solutions. I mean, every week there's a handful of new tools, and some weeks much more than a handful. And so, and each of those tools are also still continuously improving and changing and bringing out another update. So what we need to understand here is that it's a user-friendly universe, because competition is high and everyone tries to be on top of things. That makes for good tools generally. Mm-hmm. But it also puts a little bit of onus on us that we need to keep our eyes open on the market and see whether the solution that we are using has just been leapfrogged by someone else. And so This is no longer a world where you say, yes, I'll purchase the tools and I'll pay 2 years in advance because they're going to give me 20% off or whatever. I'm making numbers up, don't quote me in any purchasing conversation. But that's how it used to work, right? You said, oh, this is exactly what we need. We've run our RFP. We've decided this is the tool we want to use, and we're going to go for a two-year support and loyalty with this organization. And right now, I wouldn't sign anything that's longer than a 3-month contract, right?
Exactly. No, yeah. More than 90 days to 6 months, you're already like completely outdated, probably.
Yeah. You've got a very specific use case in mind that will add value to a very, very specific thing that you or your organization is trying to achieve or add as value for the customer or client. And for that one thing that you've identified that you want to try out, you then go and find the right tool. You run that use case hard and fast. You will celebrate successes, you will make mistakes, and you will learn from them. And that is simply the journey that you always go through when you have a new project. There's no surprises there. No new project has ever run perfectly on the first run. Mm-hmm. If someone says it has, they've probably had other trial runs running beforehand somewhere, right? And this is now simply the world we live in. We will run use cases. We will make some mistakes. We will learn from them. We'll be able to iterate and in the next round improve on those. We'll also celebrate successes, and that's how staying at the forefront of the market works. And at the same time, we have to keep our eyes open whether there might be another tool out there that helps in a different way with the same use case, or whether there's a new tool out that has leapfrogged the current solution. Mm-hmm. Or
let me throw a third scenario there that so I'm following several blogs and several kind of newsletters and whatnot around this. And one that I thought was really interesting is just, as we see with any technological explosion and innovation, the giants start gobbling them up, right? They start. And so it's like, is this something you've experienced yet where, there's 10 tools that generally do the same thing, and then a big competitor like a Bard, like a Google comes in and says, hey, we're going to just incorporate this, or maybe as a business strategy to shut them down kind of thing. As a consideration for, will my tool even exist, or will this company even be around? Is that a thought?
That's a very realistic thought, and we'll see a lot of that happening, because that's how, in a fast-moving environment, larger organizations want to utilize in their product development the agility that a startup has that they don't have. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So to go to startups and, as you said, just gobble up a startup and say that we're incorporating this. This was a fantastic idea. We're going to pay through the nose for it, but it's worth it. That's going to happen all the time. If that happens, they're probably very happy with that solution they've just purchased. Sure. And they would like to retain the client as a paying client and increase what the contract possibly that they're having with that client. So I don't see someone treating their customer base badly, but that's no guarantee. Can we trust this? No. So therefore, that brings us back to, it's a fast changing environment. Just don't tie yourself into any super long-term contracts, and stay agile. Not because you're avoiding the market, but just in a collaborative, positive fashion within your organization. Stay agile because you want to be agile, because you want to stay at the forefront, whether it's your organization and you're trying to sell things, or whether you're in education and you're trying to teach and improve learners in a really efficient fashion. You should be interested in staying agile and utilizing the tools that are at your disposal that you can afford and that are the best tools right now in that bracket that you're shopping in. That is simply how it works right now, and that we almost have to expect that from ourselves. That if we're interested in doing a good job, the shopping bit has just got a lot more complicated, but the excitement around the shopping bit has also just got a lot more exciting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. On that note, I want to point everybody, bottom of the screen here, this is the link to that article that has all these 5 points in there that you authored with Paige Chen, who I've also had on the eLearn podcast as well. A delightful person and super smart, has been in this industry for a long time. Markus, I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your extraordinarily busy day to present this to us and give us some of your time. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. I really enjoyed that, and I'll probably go down as the only person who only had 4 slides and lost one of them along the way. But hopefully the conversation was good. And yes, you're right. Paige is an absolutely wonderful person, and love the co-authoring with her and the work that I'm doing with her. So great shout out to her as well.
Fantastic presentation by Markus. And, I just got to compliment him on his, ability as a speaker, as a presenter, someone who's totally professional, that even when the tech goes wrong and you miss a slide, that he just is so smooth and is able to continue the conversation going forward. I find a conversation like that extremely informative when, someone of his type of expertise can provide a framework of those 5 questions to just kind of cut through the noise and really get to the heart of like what are the questions that we need to ask from a vendor, from someone who wants to implement an AI in our classroom or in our training department or something like that, to be able to just say, hey, look, here's some 5 questions, and at least be able to start the intelligent conversation. And as everybody who's listening, that's one of the key things that we want to be able to do, right? Where do we start those conversations? Speaking of which, I want to give a thank you to Catherine Lewis, who's over on LinkedIn. She was commenting on something that Markus put out there. Also, Angelica Spratley, who was asking a question about what percentage of company business problems do you think actually need Gen AI to solve their problems? And her guess is that many companies still just need machine learning or even statistical tests. Don't have the answer to that, but I'll tell you what, that would be a great place to look at that. I should have been. The buttons are not working the way that I want them to. It would be a great place to go over and share in our Discord server. Here it is right here. Shazam. And I see that there's several people who've joined us over there as well. Catherine Lewis just called out, Carrie Premiano, I guess. A couple other people who've joined us. This is just a welcome place. But go into that presenter questions and answers channel, and start asking questions. You can see that there's questions coming in from Nicole, from John, who's our next presenter, from Erica, etc. This is where it's all happening, and that's a great place to continue this conversation beyond the presentations that you're going to see today. To get over to that Discord server, elearnmagazine.com/AIL Discord. Again, that's elearnmagazine.com/AIL Discord. Or you can go back to that calendar page that we have as well. There's big buttons all over the place there. This is join the Discord server. Or if you're one of our All Access Pass members, there's a big button right on the home screen there as well to join this Discord. But come over to the Discord because, again, we want to build or help you build community around this particular topic to not only answer questions, but also contribute your solutions, contribute your thoughts, contribute, what you're thinking and what your institution or your company are doing. So come over and join us over there. A little shout out now, okay, so I'm fully aware that, we're an hour into our summit. And, for a lot of people, that's a big chunk of their day, right? So if you are not able to, join us for the next 2 sessions, which I hope you will be able to, honestly, where am I at? You do have the option of coming over and getting an all access pass. The all access pass is something that is available to everybody at any time. It's a very small fee. And what you'll be able to get there is all of the presentations that we've had in June, July, August, September, and now October. They're already there. They're ready to, ready for you to go back and check out. For instance, here's Vince, who's from our June presentation. You can go and watch his presentation right now. John's presentation is coming up next. His full presentation is already there as well. And then also, we have all of the presentations from 2020, 21, 22, and 22. So we're talking, an incredible amount of value for a very small price. Plus, they're all there for life. So, you pay the one-time fee. And, as we continue to add more content, especially in this AI and learning particular process or this particular thing that we're going through right now, that'll all be appearing in there going forward as well. So again, that's my pitch. Just an opportunity if if you have to go to bed, if you're on the other side of the planet, if you have to, break for dinner or, drive home right now, or maybe you just have a work day that you've got to get to, consider the All Access Pass. Other than, all the All Access Pass joining us in the Discord, I think we are ready to now bring up our next speaker, which is John Fila. And I know that he's over in the Discord right now because he's already been asking a couple of questions, which is really exciting. But without further ado, let's get to John. Hello, my name's Laddick, and I'm the principal for e-learning advocacy at OpenLMS. The presentation you're about to watch is one part of our AI and Learning Summit. I encourage you to check out all of the talks in this series as we discuss the tools of today, the near and not so near future, and the challenges we need to address around these new technologies. Our expert for this session is John Fila. John is an award-winning educator, author, and curriculum coordinator who promotes equitable access to high-quality education materials and experiences for all learners. John has led digital accessibility initiatives, developed curriculum, and facilitated the adoption and update of open educational resources. John also serves as an educational consultant, offering expertise in online learning, instructional design, accessibility, and artificial intelligence. In fact, he's written 3 books on the use of AI in education already. Please join me as we welcome John on the main stage for his presentation about Purpose and Plan, Transparency in AI Adoption. Hello, John. Welcome to the main stage here at the AI and Learning Summit. How are you today?
Hi, Stephen. Great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Excellent. I have your presentation here. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. Can you see it?
Yeah. Wonderful.
All right. Fantastic. Away you go.
All right. Thanks. What I'd like to focus on today is what we do as school districts and organizations to be purposeful about adopting tools like AI and these large language models into our instructional efforts, how we're using them with students, and how we expect students to use them. So we need to have that purpose and plan in place so that when we're working with our public, that they see that we are using these tools appropriately and in a way that helps prepare learners for their future. First, I just wanted to mention a little bit about my own journey when it comes to some of these tools. I started off teaching in a small public school without a lot of resources, and I was asked to teach a technology class, and we didn't have any new technology. We were using old donated computers. So there's struggles inherent with that. And it seemed like every setting I found myself in after that with struggling learners and different student populations, that we didn't have any stuff and the budget was always the issue. So I started gravitating towards things like open educational resources and OER, which quickly led to creating digital resources so that they were easily shareable. And then that took me down the road of accessibility. And so I just kept finding myself in whatever the next challenge was, trying to figure out what that might look like to reach the most learners in the most efficient way. And then that led me to what I'm doing now is teaching online. I teach in an online asynchronous setting across the state of Minnesota. And we get learners that are just looking to take a supplemental class as part of their normal school day. And we really need to find ways to engage these learners, not just in ways that prepare them for the future, but in ways that make them feel connected to me, their instructor, and the materials. And so online learning, especially since the pandemic, has really gotten a lot of attention to what we can do and what we still need to work on. And then so that kind of leads me into the adoption of these AI tools, which is the next big thing. What I like to compare this to is the great iPad rollout of the 2010s, where school districts were spending millions of dollars but purchasing these devices and trying to figure out ways to roll them out to their students and how to manage large batches of iPads. These were purchased and adopted before we even had good management strategies around these tools before we even knew what we wanted to do with it. So all of these students now had iPads or some other type of device, and we lacked the plan. They became more of a distraction. They became a hassle. And then we were already talking about how to replace them before there was anything really set with how we were going to use them. What I think about, that rollout and what's been happening since March, or not since March, but since November, December, when I started to notice really odd student submissions roll in, is that we just weren't prepared for this new thing that was coming. And here's a slide that represents the Dunning-Kruger effect, that phenomenon where people with a little bit of knowledge on a topic often overestimate their abilities, precisely because they ignore how much net knowledge and time and effort is necessary to master that field or that topic. So this is really important when we look at how we'll start communicating with the public around these tools. Many get their news from article headlines spread on social media. The clickbait headlines even suggest the opposite of something that might be objectively true. So without that further investigation, they share the link and the misinformation spreads. The people they share it with trust them. And so we see this happening every day, and even with our elected officials. I was promoting a book recently on Facebook with an advertisement, and I noticed that 100% of the responses I was getting to this ad were middle-aged white males that were attacking AI for having a liberal bias. And now there are tools built into the platform to help take some of the pressure off those negative comments where you can hide them, but the person who posted it doesn't even see that their comment has been hidden. And they do this so that there's no harassment around it. And that becomes really important later as we start talking about what this could look like in potential school board meetings when we're talking about the adoption of AI. So I think that idea that just hearing something from somewhere is now considered doing your own research in a lot of minds. And so a lot of people now think that because they've heard of AI, they may know a little bit about what it does. They might have asked it a question or had it tell them a dad joke or something like that once, that now they're just as experienced with the concept and the tool as someone who has seen hundreds, if not thousands, of student submissions and has had it become a large part of their day and experiences. But I also find that you don't want to tell people that what they're demonstrating is the Dunning-Kruger effect. So I prefer this same type of graph.
Before you go to the Gartner hype cycle there with the Dunning-Kruger effect, could you just tease out just a little bit more? I know that this is a part of your presentation as we get deeper, but can you tease it for us just a little bit? Like why were these, sort of white males pushing back on your book? Like, what was there a fundamental reason, or was it just all across the board, all kinds of different things, or was there like kind of one message that was coming at you?
Yeah, I think there are a few things going on, and I noticed this across social media platforms, that when someone sees something come across their feed, they think it was for them, so that they feel compelled almost to respond often, even if the thing was just as simple as an ad or a recommendation or something they might be interested in. And then what happens is they see a post that's making a claim, such as using ChatGPT in education, and they heard something about it once, and they heard it had a liberal bias. So now we're going to go in attack mode and let everybody know that this isn't something that we want in our schools, or we don't want this for our students, without even really knowing the background behind it or how it's being used. They're holding on to that claim, however false it might be, and running with it, because maybe they saw an article somewhere where somebody was talking about election results with AI, and it identified something as being true. So, so then we get these reactions, often angry, often insulting, often, trying to get a comment or a rise out of the person who posted that material. And we see it across things like Facebook, Nextdoor, Twitter. It's a common effect, and it usually comes from people that heard about a topic but don't know a lot about that topic.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Let's go. Keep going forward there.
Yeah. So if I look at this instead, it might be the Gartner hype cycle might be a more friendly way of paying attention to this journey we're on without explicitly calling out people's ignorance. It isn't quite so negative. Instead of the rise in ignorance around and the confidence on a topic, even though you know very little about it, I think about how tools like ChatGPT, Bard, and Claude are fitting into this now, where we had this trigger back in November and December with all these odd-looking assignment submissions across subject areas. And there were some conferences early on that allowed for the space to even just start talking about these things. So as I was doing that and facilitating some of these conversations, I learned a lot about where people around the country, or even around the world, were thinking about some of these tools and what some of their concerns were. So I really dove into the idea of these aren't going anywhere. Today's the worst they're ever going to be. So we should really start thinking about the inevitability of these tools and what are the appropriate uses for these. So the trigger for me was some of the teacher panic, some of the student early adopters, how it seemed to dominate every conversation that I was having around any topic in education. So I feel like we're in this, not even at the peak of inflated expectations yet, but I do want to talk about that in a little while. So we're going to be in for a bumpy ride here. We haven't even had these things for an entire school year, and now we're already, some have already started the next school year and trying to figure out what this means without any policies in place. That's interesting to me because when we look at how innovations are diffused and how they take hold, we used to have to do a lot of work around that, where we have about 2.5% of the population are innovators, about 13.5% are the early adopters, and those are the easy gets, right? Those people will just take on a new tool just because they want to be first, just because of what it says about them, because they want to see it as a solution to some of the problems that they've had. But what's interesting about tools like this generative AI is that we've already hit that tipping point. We're already well past the innovator and early adopter stage and well into the early, if not late majority stage, where 60% of teachers at least have some familiarity with the tools or have seen student submissions. At least a third of students that we know of that are even admitting to it have used some of these tools already, including my own children. So the challenge we used to have is, how do we get people to use the thing? How do we get them to incorporate these iPads, these learning management systems, email into their practice? And now we're faced with trying to figure out what the appropriate use is. Everybody's already on board, it seems, in many cases, and we'll get to those who aren't in a little bit. But what I think we need to talk about with teachers is why this happened, right? So even if they're already using it, it's enlightening sometimes to understand how we got here and talk about the relative advantage. Is it better than what it replaces? And have them think about why this is better than what we were doing before, the time it will save. And I think for relative advantage and education, that's really the big one right now, is how are we using it to save time, when that's been the thing we've been asking for as educators, for as long as we can remember. And then for me, what's important is figuring out which populations that this will support. The idea of compatibility, is it similar enough to what we're doing so the change isn't so drastic? We see most of the posts right now on social media related to things like ChatGPT have to do with having it do your lesson plans for you, have it create a study guide or a quiz. So that compatibility is already built right into it. The change isn't so drastic if we're just having it do some of the things we were already doing before. The complexity was always an issue before as well, trying to get innovations to take hold. Is it easy to understand? In this case, you open a page, type in a question, and there's your response. I mean, it really couldn't be any easier in that regard. These tools aren't magic, and they want to please us. They want to answer our questions, even if they're wrong. So it's really easy in that regard. One of the things we do with the trialability component in our district, where I work in Minnesota, is we have a lot of pilots. That takes away some of the fear for those who aren't quite ready to take it on yet. And then it also helps us work out some of the bugs. And then we can demonstrate some of the ways it's already being used, some of the ways we'd like to see it being used. So calling things a pilot then helps kind of relieve some of that anxiety, which leads us to then the observability, where we can measure the results, compare student performance, compare teacher performance, and just see what students are interested in when they're having these kinds of conversations. Because there is so much of this now in education, and we've really struggled not just to retain educators in the field, but there's so much going on that the anxiety around things like with COVID, with things like school violence, with things like student anxiety and mental health issues, and how we're engaging students, and the chronic absenteeism. A lot of times for me, I feel like the Hulk in this picture. Beneath the 150 billion tons stands the Hulk, and he's not happy. And that's kind of how I feel, like I'm holding all this stuff back so that my learners don't have to be impacted by it when they're with me. But it becomes a lot to manage. And one of the things that these large language model tools have offered me is some relief from that 150 billion tons, where it's taken off a lot of that load so that I can then spend more of my time building that relationship with my students. And a lot of times teachers are just doing that heavy lifting in isolation, and it's exhausting. So it's no wonder why they're gravitating towards tools like this on their own without any kind of prompting. They just didn't have the support needed to do those things before. And now with these tools, you don't have to go on social media and see the abuse and the divisiveness. You can interact with these tools in a collaborative way that's not as exhausting. And that they will do some of that lifting for us now. But if we go back to those peak of inflated expectations, these are the kinds of things that just kind of make my heart sink. So when I'm on social media every day looking at, my feeds, I'm constantly inundated with these kinds of posts where, it's like, whatever the 120 mind-blowing tools you must be using, or you're falling behind. And here, this one has 7,300, likes already. There's no way that's possible to even come up with all this.
I'm glad that you pulled up these. I've seen this, the what looks like the dial, or the mandala wheel there of tools. I have to admit as well that I have definitely, over the last year, I've gone from, wow, these are exciting posts, let me check it out, to like, I can't get another one.
Right.
Because and what do you think, or what has your experience been, especially, wanting to find those one or two tools that is actually helps your productivity or actually solves a problem for you, when there's a literal ocean of apps and opportunities and options? What's been do you just kind of stick with the ones that you found early and you're comfortable with, or are you still experimenting, or how's that work on your end?
Yeah. So I consider myself someone in that innovator category, right? So when the new thing comes out, I want to try it. I want to see what it means for me and how it might apply to what I'm doing. But there's no way I could keep up with all this. And so I do set aside some time just to check some stuff out. But what I think about, going back to my experience in working in these, small environments with struggling learning populations without a lot of funding, what I've always found is learning a new tool takes some of that cognitive load that you just don't have the time to give up, right? So it better be pretty good if I'm going to spend my time and effort learning to adapt this tool into my setting for my learners. And it really reminds me of what happened in the pandemic, when every vendor on the planet was making their tools available for free for some ambiguous amount of time, where I really tried to hold people back from using some of those things. Because if you're spending your time that is already so precious as an educator to learn this new tool and modify materials and upload them to these platforms and use them with your students, what happens when that goes away? What happens? So the budget's not there to get every teacher's preference of whatever new tool they grabbed onto, and now they're kind of stuck again. And that's why we have this idea in education that we're constantly recreating the wheel, because in a lot of ways we are. We lose access to these platforms, and then we have to do it all over again. We have to learn this new tool, not to mention the fact that our learners, with maybe 6, 7 different teachers in a day, all using these different tools based on their preference, what's happening to their cognitive load? And what's their experience like when they see these things happening and then it goes away? So these 150 mind-blowing AI tools, like, they're not hanging around. They're not all going to be there. A lot of them are brand new. I guess
a lot of them have like 1 or 2 employees. A lot of them, so many of them are bootstrapped, and so many of them, it's just, we know that just like with the .com boom, and then after the recession, and then you kind of had the next rise, where there's going to be massive consolidation, and many of these have a runway of 6 months maybe, because I can't even tell you the number of tools that I popped onto, and it's like so clear it was 2 people in a closet somewhere who threw it together, and then it's like, oh, we didn't turn into millionaires overnight, and so therefore
good for them, right?
Actually put food on the table.
So I appreciate that there are people out there willing to try to figure this out, but a lot of these will be kind of eaten up by the larger ones that are already out there. A lot of these are simply wrappers for ChatGPT, where they're just using the API to interface with that tool. So why not just go to the source? Why not go to the ones that have demonstrated some staying power? I do gravitate towards the OpenAI tools, the Google Bard, Claude, these things that do seem to be kind of rising to the top when it comes to the adoption of use. I don't think those 3 in particular are really going anywhere anytime soon. So when I'm working with other teachers, I do try to dial it back with all of these kinds of posts, because it's not sustainable. And I really don't want to hear every new suggestion that someone learned that day. It's really overwhelming. And I don't have the capacity to take all of that on. Right. So I want to focus more on philosophy and practice.
All right. Thanks. Away you go.
All right. So I love this scene from Attack of the Clones, Star Wars Episode 2, where they have all the clones learning everything they need to do at this accelerated pace. And I feel like that's kind of what some of these tools have been trying to promise us for a while now. And is this such a good idea? And we know that since even November of 2018, almost 5 years ago, that humans are starting to sound more like AI because of how they're interacting with these bots on social media and these other tools. So if already only half of Americans can differentiate between AI and human writing, we need to be really mindful of what it is we are hoping to get out of using these platforms. Are they really helping us learn, or are they just turning us into these automatons where we're just kind of repeating the basic simple thing that's been told? Because that's what a lot of the large language model responses are. They're the predictable, simple response that now, while they can be used to support creativity without a purposeful approach to how we're going to do that, we end up sounding more like the machines themselves. But it's no surprise why students would go down this path. Absenteeism is another epidemic we're facing. I'm seeing more and more articles about why students are avoiding school. And so I feel like the use of AI is in part a symptom of the real issues happening for learners. Why wouldn't they use it to lighten their workload? That's kind of the approach I've taken with it for myself. Why wouldn't I use this? Why wouldn't I try to figure out some way to have this do some of the more, tedious aspects around curriculum development and, coming up with ideas and brainstorming for engagement strategies and exit tickets and formative assessment, stuff like that. So when students see us using these tools to lighten our workload, well, guess what? Like, they're going to wonder, why can't they use it? Why, if it's okay for us to use as educators, and why, if it's okay for every field now adopting their own AI strategies and platforms, would we want to keep it from them? So that kind of hypocrisy then becomes something that further disengages them, and they start to look for other options. I think most of us, I think, would admit that we would totally use these tools if they were available to us when we were learners. I know I would have. But the problem is then, I've talked to educators using AI tools to develop lessons with open educational resources. So they're using standards and not that any of that's bad. I'm doing it myself. So I take this content, I take the academic benchmarks that I need to address, and I really focus on, my student audience and making things accessible. And I'm creating these beautiful lessons with the support of AI, right? But then student sees it, they want to use it to do their submission, and then the teacher might take their submission and use AI to provide feedback around it. And then we get stuck in this cycle where what's really the point if it's a feedback loop for the AI? The AI is coming up with the lesson, the student uses it to do the work, and then they get the feedback that they probably don't read that was also generated by AI. So we're all just kind of hanging off on the side now, letting the machines do all this for us. And that kind of lack of engagement is one of my bigger concerns when it comes to these issues. So when students submit AI assignments to me, I didn't always do the right thing first. I did turn it into a contentious relationship where I was accusing them of using these tools inappropriately. And that's tough to do as an asynchronous online teacher, and a student's new to a class. Well, here I am, one of the first interactions I'm having with them, accusing them of something. And then it gets really tricky, right? Because the tools used to identify AI are getting worse and worse, it seems. They disproportionately flag students who are autistic or who are English language learners. They flag other kinds of primary source resources as AI generated. So what I've really started to try to do, especially because there were students that would just flat out deny it. There were students whose parents would support the denial. So then what do I do? If I can't prove it and they're denying it, then what has happened to our relationship? So I've done some harm there. So what I had to do is quickly pivot to being a little more understanding and supportive around this. So instead of accusing students, what I will do is say, there's a little work that needs to be done here to make this sound a little less AI-ish. And I always am quick to say, I'm not necessarily saying that's what you used, but it has a lot of the hallmarks of that kind of style of writing. The things you'll want to move away from when we don't really want our seniors in high school sticking to the kind of the middle school approach of the classic 5-paragraph theme. So we can do more to insert their own connections and lived experiences, their culture. And so while I know those kinds of things can be made up by AI as well, the idea is to continually insert yourself and your personality into your work. And so that's going to be more and more important as they move forward in this world, is demonstrating how their identity connects to what they're doing, or how what they're doing connects to their identity. Because all that kind of writing is out there, and LinkedIn is already writing people's posts for them with AI, which is great for people that struggle with those accessibility issues, for people for whom, they're using different kinds of switches and techniques to create posts that might have taken them 20 minutes to half an hour to write. They can do that quickly now with a simple idea.
I want to just put an "and" on your sentence there. Like,
yeah.
I believe, I could be mistaken, but I believe as I was, doing my exercise, 48 hours ago, there was a news article about Amazon coming on and saying they're going to be using generative products to summarize product reviews, right? I'm not sure if you've heard this one, where I find that fascinating. And we're now saying we're taking literally the most human experience around purchasing a product, which is I've received it, I'm going to touch it, I'm going to use it, I'm going to actually do that, and then give my real feedback to it. And what this company just said is, we're going to take all that and we're going to basically break it down and summarize it into like a few bullet points, because we don't have the time.
Yeah.
I find that extremely interesting, and I think we'll have some very deleterious effects going forward.
Yeah, I do worry about that, especially when I'm reading some of the book reviews that were AI generated as well, where now we're just going to count adverbs and the use of passive voice in sentences and then determine a book's value based on that. Like, I happen to kind of like those things, so
Sure.
That to me is detrimental to the creative artistic community, as much as just the flat out theft of intellectual property when it comes to some of the image creation tools or even some of the writing that's out there. And I mean, I for sure tell my students there's nothing wrong with using AI to get things done, right? But in the end, we want to alter it sufficiently so that what we're displaying and putting out there as ours is an accurate reflection of us and not the other way around. We don't want to sound like machines because machines can do that and they're better at it than we are. But when students will just paste a submission that says, as a machine, I'm not able to answer that question, where they didn't even read it, like that's where I kind of get hung up. Is like there was something about the experience, about the assignment, about their lives that they just didn't have it that day. They just didn't want to do it, and they're using AI to get around it. That's what I want to get at. Why did they hire ChatGPT to do that assignment for them when it really wouldn't have been that much to do? So then I can start getting into some of the real reasons behind their connection to the work, or the lack of connection to the work, or their lack of engagement. And it doesn't become about the AI anymore. It becomes about getting to know that person. And so we can use these tools as a way to just kind of take the temperature, of a student and figure out where they're at.
Awesome. Thanks.
So when I'm talking to students about that AI integrity, what I've started sharing with them is that I do distinguish the use of AI for different purposes. And, I think AI assisted original work is really important, and it's important for them to have experience with in a setting where the stakes aren't very high. I encourage them to use it for studying, for homework, for research. I don't compel them to use it because I can't make anyone set up an account somewhere. There's no large kind of enterprise solution for this yet where we can be sure of what's happening with our student data. So if they're already using it, great, you've made that choice, and but I want to help guide you through what the appropriate use for that tool is, as long as it's reflecting your own understanding, your own knowledge. You shouldn't use it as your own. So that includes the essays, the solutions to problems, other assignments. I want them to, expend some intellectual efforts, not just grab the answer and paste it in as the response. And then I'm looking for their responsible use, where they shouldn't allow other students to copy paste their work. So we're not going to do that with AI either. So we share the generated answers. We can have conversations about those kinds of things, but we're not going to help enable other people to pass off AI-assisted work as their own. And so those are the kinds of things we've always seen happen, where someone might give a copy of their paper to someone with a different teacher but the same class. But having the conversations around those then helps, for me, build those relationships at a deeper level than just saying, you can't do that, 0, you're done, that kind of stuff. So just like copying and pasting information from other websites or sources, even if you're paraphrasing, that kind of plagiarism kind of falls in line here as well. We shouldn't represent AI generated content as our own original work. And there's still such kind of muddy copyright guidelines around these areas. And even if you have to cite it or not, that especially in these early days, we want students trying to just navigate where their original ideas fit into all of this. So if we as teachers are using it to create the curriculum, then what's the process for that? So there isn't a lot of guidance yet in organizations. We have the early adopters and the early majority trying to figure out what this means now. But without some kind of plan in place, I think we get ourselves into trouble or potentially into some trouble unless we are really figuring out what are the needs that this is helping us address. Where is the professional development around these tools? How are we evaluating the solutions that we're coming up with and using these tools? You know, who's in our support network? Right now, it's just kind of a wild west. Everybody is grabbing on to whatever they can, whatever supports they can, whatever people they're following on social media. But I do think it's important to be out there and sharing the successes and the challenges around this work. And what I fear right now, just like the danger of social media when it comes to mental health, where we're seeing everybody out there living their best life and, you know, we feel bad about ourselves because we're not doing those things. I don't think we share our challenges enough. I don't think we share where we failed at it enough in any kind of meaningful way. And then I also have concerns about, because these tools are trained on what humans have created, and humans often create things that are incredibly inequitable and biased, how are we evaluating that in the responses? So we need some guidance and clarity here from leaders within school districts to help demonstrate how we're using these. Because what we don't want are these kinds of meetings that we've been seeing more and more of at school board meetings across the country, where everyone's seen the footage of these contentious meetings, you know, over the mask and vaccine mandates. We've seen them again around the topic of critical race theory. We've seen them around social emotional learning and different types of instruction. You know, some of these become violent. You know, lots of police breaking up fistfights at school board meetings, which just seems like ridiculous now, but that's what's happening. And so if we have a segment of the population that believes that AI has a liberal bias, and they already think that teachers are indoctrinating their students, what are these public perceptions that we have to face around AI, and, you know, what it is not? You know, this sounds crazy and ridiculous, but there are people in my region who have been outraged over the use of litter boxes in schools for students to use in the classroom. There are really people who believe this ridiculous idea that there are litter boxes in schools for students to use because of how they may identify. And if those are the kinds of people that we have to have conversations with these tools, what will be the thing that convinced them? You know, if we looked at the factors of an innovation scale and the kind of the laggards sitting there at the end, you know, I consider these people the laggards, maybe even off to the side from the laggards, because we're not even dealing with objective reality anymore.
I mean, there's another L word. It's the Luddites, right? It's
right.
You know, where it's, and I'm trying to not paint this in a negative connotation, but there are people who just don't want to continue moving. You know, they don't want to continue to progress with technology or those kinds of things. But I think that you're really hitting an important question on the head here, in that, let's just take that litter box example. Have you had these experiences where it's just like, look, the objective reality is not what you're saying. We can show you the evidence of it. We can bring you into the class. We can, you know, demonstrate this. And have you been able to then sort of have, you know, someone say, oh, okay, sorry, like I overreact. And I would assume most reasonable people would be like that, but I know there's still a lot. There's the pseudoscience out there that we want to believe. There is, you know, cultural indoctrination that is just terrifyingly, powerful.
It's really hard because if a school board makes an announcement that this isn't happening, well, then they don't believe that, right? So the only thing that I've ever seen move the needle at all is the personal relationships that people have with members of their community, where if someone is standing in your house saying how ridiculous it is that kids are using litter boxes in school, you can stop them right there and just say,
hey,
no,
look, I'm
not, like, that's
here.
not happening. Yeah. So like you can use the fact that you know them, or at least they may trust you a little more than the system, which they take issue with. I mean, the system is us. Like, we are the people making these decisions, and so I think it's only, unfortunately, it takes a really long time, and it's hard work to do that, and it adds to that portion of the 150 billion tons we saw the Hulk lifting, in that early slide. Like, come on, do I have to really talk about this now too? Like, I really have. And so AI, I not quite so extreme, but I think it has the potential to be there, especially when someone shares that first prompt that they got a response to that said something they didn't like. Because we can even see how some of these things are changing across the country where I work. We embrace the concepts of critical race theory. We embrace inclusion and equity in everything we do. So when I'm writing lessons and I'm asking it, the AI, around these set of benchmarks in this curriculum to include multiple perspectives, to include, LGBTQ plus learners, to include universal design for learning and social emotional learning aspects, I know that what I'm doing, I would get fired for in another state. And I've talked to teachers in other states that are terrified of putting this out there, where they won't just be persecuted, within their own community, but prosecuted for violating a law just to include marginalized populations, and making sure that these things are kind of working for everybody. So the divide, unfortunately, around these tools is going to lead to more of this kind of contention. So these toxic attitudes about how our public life for educators, we're unsafe. We're accused of indoctrinating kids. We're accused of being groomers. We're accused of inserting liberal bias and all. And so we really kind of get stuck, which is no wonder then that teachers would gravitate more towards AI to have these kinds of collaborative experiences and develop this content, because if they do it anywhere outside of their own experience, they're setting themselves up. So we get stuck.
A tough conversation that we will continue a little later. Thanks.
Yeah. And so what I focus on is, how do we deal with that resistance? How should we approach that fear? We have to empathize with the concerns and still advocate for the benefits of using AI. We have to be incredibly transparent, right? So if we think about back to the factors of an innovative practice, how is this better than what we're replacing? Is it similar enough to what they've already experienced so that this isn't a drastic change for them? We have to make it simple for them to understand, and they can see the results of that. So we have to continue to go back and communicate in these ways that is kind of helping diffuse this fear, and help promote understanding around it's not as scary as it's being made out to be. Here's how we're using it. Look at these examples, to the extent that you can. It's just imperative to me that we're asking these tools that we're using about the systemic inequities, related to the prompts that we use, because the tools don't identify that by default. If you ask ChatGPT why students are suffering from so many mental health concerns now when they weren't before, you're going to get good answers, but they're not going to be the answers that I feel like my own children would tell me around. They're scared of school violence. They're scared. They're tired of some of the anti-LGBTQ sentiment that's out there. They're tired of the racism. They're tired of the sexism. They're leaving school for lots of reasons and gravitating towards other types of experiences and settings, like alternative schools and online learning, because it's stressful for them in ways that it wasn't stressful for us. So when I'm looking to use AI to develop, I'm always trying to ask it whose perspectives are being left out. So I'm getting some multiple points of view. I'm incorporating SEL, universal design for learning, anti-racism strategies, inclusive language. But that's only because I have the expertise to know the response is doing those things. If I just ask those in my prompt because I know those things are important, but I don't have a background and a vocabulary and how to think about that and talk about that, I can't evaluate the response. So without the expertise, we can't be certain what we're asking them to provide is, what we want. Because a lot of times if you ask it to create a lesson, it's going to have a lot of myths in there about learning styles and brain-based learning and things we already know aren't true, but that we all practiced, and I had classes on them in grad school. So we all have to be media literacy teachers now. We all have to communicate to learners in the community that these aren't scary, but we'll take a critical eye. We're transferring these skills across subject areas, across grade levels. Students can find credible information that they can cite that supports and refutes the claims of the AI response. That's what I want learners to know about. So if I'm talking to the public about it, I feel like those kinds of responses will help alleviate some of that concern, where this is about your, learner or the children in our community being able to become skeptical of information, and those, they want that too. They already distrust so many of the sources that are out there that we can start focusing on synthesizing the information and making connections and turning that into something new and transferring it to other new situations. So when we're creating policies and practices around these that then we make transparent and available to the public, we want to talk about how we're making regular evaluations and assessments to ensure the integration of AI is aligned with our principles and guidelines. We can talk about having an oversight committee where we're representing people in the community and students and teachers so that we can monitor the implementation and ensure that we're adhering to our guidelines that we're setting forward. But for me, in all of my job interviews as an educator, I've never once been asked about my subject area. So I teach English language arts. No one's ever asked me a question about English language arts. That's more important now.
That freaks me out.
Yeah, and I don't know a teacher that's ever been asked about their subject area. They might be asked why they gravitated toward that subject area, but probably even not that. They want to know about classroom management. They want to know about your prior experience, or how you manage and run your classroom, how you build relationships, how you engage parents. Nothing about English, right? So
that's the profundity behind that. I think we don't like that's a whole nother presentation hour. It's a whole other hour discussion. But like the profundity behind that, I think it's you've that thread has been through this entire presentation here. But what you just said, it's around how are you managing these human relationships, not necessarily the subject matter.
Well, it's even more important now that we have the expert review the responses. So that expertise around subject area, around equity and inclusion, around social emotional learning and accessibility, around how we talk about marginalized populations. Like, we need expertise in these areas, because if people are using AI to create things that support those learners, and you don't know enough about the topic to evaluate the response, we could find ourselves in a lot of trouble and actually to end up doing more harm. And then making sure that none of the students' personal private information is finding its way into these tools. So we really need some strong guidelines around this, because we do have a public that will make posts like this. This was a news article or an interview I did for a local TV station a couple days ago. And this was another comment. They have no idea what it is. That's most people still right now out in the community. And we also have, the same person later went on to write, they don't see how it could impact their life, or they don't find it useful in any way.
Could we take a moment here too to dial that back and just consider for a second as well, this person here, I'm going to go ahead and make a huge assumption, but this person here probably uses a Facebook or a Twitter or
Right.
something.
This was Facebook.
Or yeah, okay, so they have to be using Facebook first
Yeah.
of all. Second of all, they probably use Google Maps. Third of all, they've probably used Uber. They probably so just to say, and let that just sort of let that explode for a second. Like we've been in the sea of using artificial intelligence in our lives for decades now. Super profoundly over the last 5 years for sure, but decades now. And then for someone to say, I'm no expert, I really have no idea that's a really interesting thing. Now, most people who drive a car, I don't think that they're gonna, they're not so probably savvy or keen on, exactly what happens when you push the ignition button. That's great.
Right.
You don't have to be, but just to know that it's there and it's working in the background, that is a huge, huge thing.
Or what it's for.
Yeah.
We all know what cars are for and what TVs are for. And this is a person using social media that has almost certainly interacted with chatbots
100%.
and probably less aware of it than people that know of their existence. And we also, I won't say it's an argument, but I got in a energetic discussion recently with an educator at the higher ed level who wants students to go back to in-person, paper, pencil. You're doing your work and your assessment on paper, right? But how are we going to expand access to these educational experiences if we're seeing higher rates of anxiety and absenteeism and now suggesting that students have to do everything in person on paper?
Well, not only that, there's just no connection to reality in the workforce, right?
Right.
Like there's no person who is working for a Fortune 100 company right now who sits down with a paper and pencil and designs the next thing. You know what I mean? Like,
but this is how schools kind of tend to operate, right? When someone's afraid of something, we block it and shield them from it. So, this is the next version of that where, oh, well, that's the solution. Like, that's easy. We just go back to paper and pencil and then we don't have to worry about it at all while the rest of the world goes on. Yeah.
Sure.
So we're going to drive more students away from these traditional settings than we already are. We're going to increase absenteeism. We have to figure out how we build meaningful relationships with learners. And that's going to be hard if their first interactions with us is the insinuation that they're going to be academically dishonest if we don't put in these harsh, guidelines for them. So for me, it's an equity issue. What do we do with students who are missing due to rising COVID infections, for instance? So right now the rates are going up and schools starting for us now already. And there are students who can't physically hold a pen or a pencil, or that they just take longer to work than the majority of their peers. I mean, there are a lot of students that can't get the work done in that time. So the concept of trying to bring it back to this one size fits all approach that we know didn't work before, only so we can avoid ChatGPT, is going to drive students more towards online learning. It's going to be more hoops for them to jump through. And we already have students that are seeking those options because they've been disconnected and the system has failed them in some way. So there's a lot of vulnerable learners out there, and it shouldn't surprise us when they're looking for ways to lighten some of that load. So we have to address the students with the public, when we talk about the appropriate uses of these tools. So speaking of appropriate uses, we've had policy discussions before, but we have to understand the potential of the tools, just so what they are and how they can be used. We just went through a global pandemic where we witnessed just how critically important high quality digital instruction was, and we just weren't ready. Even though there have been people teaching online for a long time, their practices didn't kind of disseminate out into the educational community in general, and they still really haven't. We're starting to see more of those programs then kind of shut down and get absorbed by other online programs. We should be focused on how we improve the kinds of experiences and providing more access in multiple ways, and not kind of dialing that back. So we have to set aside time for these conversations on a regular basis. The topic takes over so many of the meetings I've been a part of because that's where people are right now. That's what they're concerned about. That's what they need support with. The time to have these conversations wasn't built into our schedules. The budget's not set aside to have them. We have to be creative about how we're doing this and make these happen. Because I don't want it just to be used as create a study guide for this lesson or create a quiz for this lesson. There's so many deeper, more meaningful experiences that we can help create, or that we can use these tools to help us create. So we've got another emergency learning situation I think we should just all get used to at this point, where we know that leads to rash decisions. We know it leads to burnout, banning tools, missing important aspects of what ethical and appropriate use is. We're just scratching the surface of what's coming. And so we've already had people starting the new year without a plan for how we're going to address these, and they're asking for one. They're asking for guidance. So, one of the things I've tried to do then is be as prolific as possible with my time, and dive into these and support teachers on how they can use it, how students can use it, and what we do as organizations to help bring some of this into our current practice, and how we share that with our public. So for those who are interested, please feel free to reach out to me. And I love talking about all of this kind of stuff. I love thinking about it. I love arguing about it, and just kind of wrestling with the issues and what it means for us.
John, thank you so much for this. This has been, I'm just going to pull your slides down for a second.
Yeah.
This has been a fantastic overview, and I love that it's a true, kind of from the trenches perspective, especially in kind of that K through 12 space, because we don't hear as much about it. I think there's a lot about higher education. There's a lot about learning and development, learning and development in the adult learner universe.
Yeah.
But it's profound. I mean, throughout this summit, people have heard me talk about my 3 kids, and how we've been working with them over the last year as well in this regard. Do you think that is this an inflection point for the education system writ large? And I mean, do you think that do we need to crack, evolve, change what, really kind of maybe even rewrite from scratch? Or are you more of an advocate of let's just keep the pace of,
yeah, well,
the kind of the Kaizen, incremental as we go on.
I'm a firm believer in that factors of an innovation model that require us to be able to do things like compare it to what we're already doing, and to make that kind of incremental improvement. While I would love to just recreate the entire system, I've been part of initiatives, and I'm currently part of one that's trying to do that they're just not going to go anywhere, right? It's just not. It's not realistic to assume that people who have been teaching for their careers, or students who have been going to school for a decade, have the ability to just turn around and do something a different way. They're not used to it. Their parents don't understand it. So we do have to kind of start with the easy, low-hanging fruit, the study guides, the lesson plans, the formative assessment. So, okay, then that's an easy lift. We're using it now to help with our work around identifying essential benchmarks and writing our assessments around the essential standards. So, we are starting to have it do a lot of the things that we've always said were important. We just never had the time to actually do. Mm-hmm. Right. So lots of formative assessment for practice. That's good. Who has time to write all those? Well, now we do.
Now you do. Yeah.
Yeah. So helping me to create experience for my learner that I've always to, I just never had the time to do it. And I try to shortcut that with, Google Meets, text messaging, phone calls, that kind of stuff, and just building that relationship, which we'll have more time to do now, frankly. And that's what's exciting to me about this, is the capability of these tools to take over some of the more tedious aspects of content creation and feedback and things like that. And now I spend my time more engaged with the students personally, because all this other stuff is done and off my plate.
On that note, my friend, I will let you get back to that busy day of yours. I can't thank you enough for taking, a full hour out of your day to talk with us about your experience. I encourage everybody, maybe check out your books. And obviously, as we saw on your last slide there, I'll put it back up on the screen here for a second. Check you out at John Fila, basically everywhere.
Yeah, I'm all over the place.
That's super cool. Thank you so much again.
All right.
And
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it. Yeah, happy to do it.
All right, that was a presentation by John Fila. Can't thank him enough. And I'm just going to dive right in here to what was happening during that entire presentation. If we go over to the presenter questions, it's still happening right now. Just, tons of great interaction. I want to thank Nicole, Marley, Catherine, Carrie, Angelica, etc. Great conversation going on in our Discord server. Oh, shucks. And I forgot to put it onto the stage here. So there it is. Now you can see it. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of roll through this thread because while his presentation was going, he's in the Discord with all of these great people asking real questions, giving real answers, feedback, different experiences about using AI in the classroom, how to present it out there. I also want to give a shout out to people who are over on LinkedIn or on YouTube or Facebook right now, like Gina Guerin. I think that's how you pronounce your name. I apologize. Almost impossible to go through your day without interacting with AI. I want to thank Catherine about commenting. Angelica again commenting. Marley Lopez, thank you for commenting. Just a real great conversation. I love John's presentation. I find it to be super, super practical. A very much I'm in the trenches doing this every day type of presentation. Very little theory and very much this is what's actually happening. And gives us a lot to think about around those challenges that he's experiencing and many other people are experiencing as well. Final pitch for you in terms of again, we've been live now for almost 2 hours, and I know that that's difficult for many people. Many people who are on the other side of the planet, for me, are probably asleep. They're probably not here anymore. If you're in Europe or Africa right now, it's kind of difficult to maybe you're getting into the end part of your day. And even those, around here, it's the work day. So you may be teaching a class right now. You may need to, may need to go to the office. You may need to have a meeting or something that needs to get done. Consider our all access pass. Our all access pass, again, very affordable price. And it gives you access immediately to all of these presentations. As you can see on your screen right now, this is the presentation that John just gave. The presentation that Markus gave earlier is already right here. You can see, and then, we're going to be coming up right now with Edie, and her presentation is already in here as well. And you can also see here, Michael Vaughn, Vince Hahn, Pascal, Lena, Tom, Tristia, so many people in each of these categories. Sorry, so many experts that have taken time out to do the work for you, right? They've tested the tools, they've gone through the issues. They're already on that sort of that cutting edge of, what does AI and learning mean? Go over and check them out. And as I've said before, over the past couple hours, you also get access to, the dozens and dozens more in 2022, 2021, and 2020. So again, for a fairly small price, it is one heck of a large volume of content that you can get over there. And then finally, for those of you who have not yet, please come over and join us in our Discord server. As I just showed you a few seconds ago, lots of great questions and conversations going over there. I want to thank everybody who's participating in the Discord server right now. Go over to elearnmagazine.com/AIL Discord. Join us. That we're going to keep the Discord server going. It stays live through, between these sessions and then, after these sessions and whatnot, so that those conversations keep going. More resources can be shared, questions and can be answered and whatnot as well. So without further ado, let's get to our third and final presentation for our October session here today. Before we put it up there, I just want to remind everybody, my name's Ladek. I'm from OpenLMS. You can always go over to openlms.net and check us out over there. And also go over to elearnmagazine.com. I think that you can see here down on the ticker down here, how to get to the Discord, how to get to all of those resources that we have over at eLearn Magazine as well. So without further ado, I give you Edie. Hello, my name's Ladek, and I'm the principal for e-learning advocacy at OpenLMS. The presentation you're about to watch is one part of our AI and Learning Summit. I encourage you to check out all the talks in this series as we discuss the tools of today, the near and not so near future, and the challenges we need to address around these new technologies. Our expert for this session is Edie Kirkman. Edie is a product, engineering, and marketing leader who thrives on the challenge of turning ideas into exceptional products. Her work is fueled by imagination, curiosity, and a relentless pursuit of the understanding of the why behind everything. Please join me as we welcome Edie on the main stage for her presentation titled Up-Level Your Understanding Around the World of AI. Hello, Edie. Welcome to the main stage here at the AI and Learning Summit. How are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
I am well. I'm excited for your presentation here right now. I'm going to pull up your slides. You can see them as well. Yes.
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. Off we go. Why don't you take us away?
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Edie Kirkman. I am a Chief Product and Chief Digital Officer creating software for large Fortune 500 companies and startups. So today we're going to go through a chat to really level up your understanding of what's going on with AI and how does it apply to us. So let's get started. And we're going to start today with a way to think about AI, because everybody has different levels of understanding. So we're just going to go do the walkthrough. The best analogy that I can give is just to picture your brain as a magical recipe book. It's full of dishes that you never tried before. And the book is very, very unique because it can constantly learn and adapt to the new ingredients and techniques and flavors that only you like. And the more you cook, the actually better that the recipes become, because your magic recipe book represents artificial intelligence. And we can just break it down into how we think about recipes. So first, it's the ingredients, which is the data. So the data is the ingredients of your recipes. The more diverse and high quality your ingredients are, which is the data, the better and tastier and more interesting your dishes, the AI capabilities will actually become. So think about farm to table, how fresh and great quality ingredients make your recipes taste great. The chef that's actually preparing your recipes are the algorithms. They actually follow the recipes in the cookbook for you. They combine the ingredients of data in lots of creative ways to make delicious dishes for you. And the outcomes of it, it's really just predictions and responses based on whatever type of AI that you're using. And then comes the taste test. Machine learning is actually like taste testing. So the chef, the algorithm, tries lots of different combinations of ingredients with the data and then adjusts the recipes based on your feedback. So it's really creating more accuracy and more targeted towards your desired outcomes. And then if you use ChatGPT before, you know, the thumbs up, thumbs down, that's actually giving the feedback. So that's your taste test. And the more dishes the chef prepares, the more refined these recipes gets for you. And so the more you interact with any kind of chat bot or any type of AI, you're asked to refine the recipes based on the way you like. And it's just like telling ChatGPT or anything feedback that, hey, I want a little bit more salt. I want a little bit more acid. Or in some cases, I just want more meat. I want more substance to get my answers out. So this is one way that you can kind of think about how AI is really following you, your tastes and preferences. And, you know, ChatGPT is in the news a lot, and people are still deciding is it hype or not hype. Now, so who out there believes that AI is not quite mainstream yet? We remember watching cartoons at the Jetsons of flying cars that's self-navigating. Well, the cars are not quite flying yet, but they are self-driving today. So Tesla introduced their autopilot program, and then these are road ready, and you don't even know who's having it activated or not. And they're working terrific. Space Odyssey. So some piece of Space Odyssey in your life are chatbots like Siri or also Alexa. And then these are great tools that we actually incorporate into our lives. And Alexa's constantly listening in my house. This is Wall-E. So we don't necessarily have a world that's completely depleted of natural resources, but my floors definitely need a lot of cleaning. So Roomba is one way that we already have AI in our house to learn our square footage and where the high traffic areas may be.
I just got to say that I just have to thank you. And I think so far I've seen two other presenters bring Wally in, because so many people are talking about Terminator, right? And Skynet as the AI equivalent is where we're going. But now, ironically, in Wally, the AI does at the end. There's a little scene there, but it's kind of like, hey, AI as the golden future, right? So I just want to say that's pretty cool.
Well, it can't go haywire if you let it. So we will talk about that as well. So AI is actually all around us. And whether you realize it or not, it's been around for a very long time. And if you're using Netflix or Amazon, all these recommenders, they are doing the exact same thing as far as helping you predict what you will like more. And even your Nest thermostat, it's learning how to save you money in the long run. Are you away from your home? Do you like a cold evening versus during the day? You might be away. So it's constantly adapting to actually your usage and behavior. Even things like Waze and Google Maps and how it can recalculate your route and then how fast you can get there is using artificial intelligence. So now, what exactly is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence basically leverage computers and machine learning to solve problems and make decisions just like a normal human would. So that's the difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning. Machine learning is just the machine doing training and then going through algorithms. But artificial intelligence is actually the degree of humanness in decision making to support us. There's 4 levels of artificial intelligence, and they are reactive, limited memory, theory of the mind, and self-aware. And the degrees that they're different is actually how close are they like us. So reactive systems are very basic. They can only react to current situations. They cannot learn from the past, or they can't predict from the future as well. And the next level is really theory, limited memory. I'm going to pause. You're going to have to edit this out. Okay. The next level is limited memory. These AIs can learn from the past. It actually can enable better decisions to be made in your future. And then theory of the mind are actually sensing. They can sense your emotions and they can go beyond what you're just saying. They can understand how you're actually saying it, if it's true or not. And then that actually creates a greater degree of personalization. And the last part is really self-aware, where the machines are doing its own thinking, capabilities, and processing, just like a human would. We can look at the first type, and then this actually goes back to the 1990s. I think everybody remember when the IBM machine actually beat a famous chess grandmaster. When it comes down to it, it's really just reactive machines because there's only so many combination of chess moves. And by mastering these moves, by learning about all the different moves and program into its database, it can just process this information much faster than Garry Kasparov and actually beat him. When you look at limited memory, these are the type of things that's like autonomous cars. And it can actually use the Tesla driving system, for example. It was introduced back in, I think, around 2015, the original version of it. So this thing's been on the road for almost 10 years when it comes down to learning and then being able to navigate the roads. And then right now, it's actually fully autonomous, that there's actually beta started this year, and about 300,000 people are on this beta to fully use the autonomous driving features of it. And then think about it. The limited memory function is really predicting. It's taking not just your information of what's sensing, but all the drivers out there. How construction zones may be different from each other based on the degree of rain and wetness and slipperiness of the surface or low visibility. So it takes in all of this information from every single user, every single experience, and then quickly reacts to it in your own vehicle to help you drive. And theory of the mind, ChatGPT is one to resemble theory of the mind out there. And recently, there has been a test out there for AIs and bots to take. And it basically goes through and asks you a series of questions. And some of the questions ask you to infer what's actually going on as far as what people say and what they mean. So in this test, it's very interesting because it asks you some questions like, for example, you order a bucket of popcorn, but it's not really popcorn. It's in the popcorn bucket. And when you look inside, it's filled with potato chips, but you didn't know that it was. How would that make you feel? How do you think the person that's receiving it, what would their reaction be? So these are type of inferences that these chatbots are actually making. And according to a test that ChatGPT 3.5 recently took, it actually scored at a 9-year-old's comprehension of human behavior and sentiments. So think about that. I want to show you something in theory of the mind. There's a lot of different growth in this area, and I'm going to show you a video. In this first video, we're going to watch a theory of the mind AI, and this is something that was developed in 2018. And then I just want to show you the progression of where this company Soul Machine started from, and then where they are now.
Baby X.
This is Baby X, so she's basically an autonomously animated virtual infant. All of her behaviors are generated on the fly by neural networks running live, and so she's seeing me and listening to me and responding to what I do. So she's going to start wondering what I'm doing and starting to get upset because I'm not paying attention to her. So I need to calm her down, but I have to talk to her like a real baby. Okay. Hey.
Baby X is driven by a virtual nervous system. So let's take a look at what that actually means.
What we're looking at here is Baby X's virtual anatomy, which is all controlled by her virtual nervous system. So that's controlling everything that she's looking at, all of her expressions. It's even controlling her breathing rate and her heartbeat. We can make it more transparent and we can somehow see the whole model. All of the motion that you're looking at is controlled essentially by her brain model, which is driving her limbs, her facial expressions. We can see the facial nerves through here. Let's take another.
So this is the former version, and a lot of development's been done. So I'm going to show you the new version.
I'm a theory of mind AI, meaning I can understand and interpret human emotions and intentions. My creators at Soul Machines have programmed me to recognize facial expressions, body language, vocal tones, and other cues to help me better interact with humans. I'm also able to remember conversations and use the information I've learned to better understand people. It's really cool.
Nova, I'm really sad today because I did not do good on my test.
That's so tough. I'm sorry to hear that. It's normal to feel sad when things don't go as planned, but it's important to remember that failure is part of learning and growth.
So based on looking at the progression of these chatbots and the development of it, think about all the capabilities that it could deliver from a learning and development perspective. It is a bot that has understanding of how people might be feeling, if they're frustrated, if they're excited, or if they're just confused. And the possibilities of how you can interface with a virtual agent or a chatbot is really full of possibilities of how we can perhaps use this for homeschooling, use this for tutoring, using this for other purposes as far as how to instruct and respond to people's inquiries. And the final level is really, what we talked about, the Skynet level earlier. And Luckily, it's not here just yet. There are some instances where it could feel like that, just because the programming of how it works today. And it kind of goes down to the ethics topic that's in the news. How much enablement of AI that we need, and also how much governance of AI that we need to have as well. Recently in the news, there was a military activity with drones out there, and it was to take out this target. And halfway on its virtual simulation, the operator called it off. And what happened was the drone was getting points as points of success to take out this target. When the operator called it off, it thought that, okay, the mission is, the operator's jeopardizing the mission. So instead, in the virtual simulation activity, it actually went back to try to take out the operator. And then humans programmed it and then redirected the course and said, okay, if you take out the operator, then you're going to lose points. Then it calculated the next best alternative, which was to take out the command module, the command center that's broadcasting that message to the drone itself. So at the end of the day, we really have to be careful about how we enable the bots and the AI. We have to have ethics and thinking and logic. How do we protect the things that we need to protect? And it doesn't necessarily have to be defense and safety, but also how do we protect things and make sure in our curriculum that certain things doesn't go off course. So there are some walled garden concepts for AI machine learning using these large language models. And we're looking at much smaller models outside of ChatGPT today that are more programmable and can be more focused on your own content that's inside the companies that you're working with. And ChatGPT, if you all are using it today, I think that everybody understands about prompts and things like that. So we're actually going to talk a little bit about the guts of ChatGPT, what it actually means. When we moved from ChatGPT 3.5 to GPT-4, it actually increased a lot of parameters. When I say a lot, it went from 175 billion, which is pretty huge, to 100 trillion parameters. And what does that mean exactly? So, when it comes down to it, it may not be more information, but it's really about the connectivity and the nodes between information. Just like your brain can make synapses. And then now with ChatGPT-4, it can even make more of those connections. So when you think about it, maybe ChatGPT-3, an example is that you can say dog and leash. There is actually a direct correlation that GPT-3 can make. In GPT-4, you can say dog, rope, and it'll make inference of leash. So that's just kind of an idea of what type of concepts can correlate together that may seem disparate, and it can pull it together for you. And then the other component is that we're getting so much more formats of data into ChatGPT-4. So GPT-3 is fully text-based. It was crawling the internet, and then, based in 2021 times, all the information that it could grab. And then now you actually can process much more information. You can process text out of audio files. You can process information out of videos. Just think about how many videos are out there on the internet, just on YouTube alone. It's a huge knowledge base to tap into. So depending on what you're working on, certain things you can use ChatGPT-3 for. That's pretty static as far as a knowledge base, how to do this and that. But if you're actually creating more robust contextual content, you will want to move to GPT-4. And then, when should we use ChatGPT and how do we use it? From my perspective, GPT is actually a great technology to get you a head start to where you need to go. It is a great brainstorming tool. It's a really great denominator of learning something new that you're not familiar with. It's an opportunity to, kind of expand your horizons without going through the rabbit hole of the World Wide Web where you start with one thing and then you end up with something else 3 hours later. It's a more focused search engine that brings back and correlates all the information into a summary level. Now, we're having a lot of issues, I know, in schools with plagiarism and things like that, and even with content development, that sure, you can use it as a starter, but how many people are really using whatever comes out of ChatGPT without much manipulation and putting their own thought process into it? So as educators, I always loved my math teacher from 4th grade. She said, show your work. And if you can't beat ChatGPT, there's ways to join it. I hear about some development learning professionals and educators out there that basically said, okay, we can actually use the output of ChatGPT. We're going to teach kids how to use it, just like we had the TI calculator back in the day, that you can start adding mathematical formulas in there. And how do we use that? And can we actually look at ChatGPT and give assignments to our kids where they do research and they synthesize information using ChatGPT, they create their content, and then they literally send us their chat streams with ChatGPT and we can take a look at it? Or, the whole learning concept may be changing around. It's not as much of a produce a paper, test your knowledge with multiple choice anymore. Maybe it's just proving that you actually learned the subject matter. And when you look at interactions in the classroom, that perhaps children can read and learn this information or write essays away from the classroom, but they actually do a 20-minute writing assignment to demonstrate what they've learned with very specific and poignant problems to solve. But if you do want to catch your kids in the act, these are some great websites out there. There's originality.ai, and then GPT-0 that's out there. GPT-0 is actually made by a college student, and he has a business with 5 to 7 people working on this right now. So as all the GPT platforms upgrade and enhance, these tools are working alongside of them and then working to upgrade their technologies to be able to catch people in the act as well. So if you're looking for something for your classrooms, this is a great way to check these out and then see how it's detecting any kind of AI content. Let's look at some of the possibilities of where we can go with this type of technology. Traditionally, learning development courses are very top down from the companies that they order this. They're like, oh, we need cyber compliance training, or we need resilience training because of COVID-19. And very few people probably request for cyber training and compliance training. And when it comes down to looking at the courseware, it was very expensive to go bottom up as far as what the learner wants to learn, and then how do we develop a curriculum for it. And with GPT, it actually gives you the opportunity to build some curriculum in short time, or you can actually build some curriculums perhaps dynamically and have the learner choose their own adventure path of learning. Now, right now, micro content is really popular and huge for good reason, because the human attention span is just not that long. And especially in a work context, that very rarely you would even have 40 minutes to sit down and do a set of trainings. So it's really great to break it down into bite-sized pieces and then help people navigate themselves to the most important piece and then test their understanding. Right now, there's a lot of cool Chrome extensions out there that's AI enabled. So just think about this from a learning standpoint, that learners can engage with the content even more. So if there's questions that you might want to ask, or terms that you didn't understand, or background for why this is and how this came to be, it may not be in the courseware itself, but it can provide some guidance for those people that need more contextual learning, that wants more baseline, or may not understand the subject matter just because they're not familiar with it. And the technology today can support a lot of different things. I actually have a friend that he's a developer, and in about 3 weekends, he created a tool for his son with dyslexia. What he did was he took a book of his dyslexia vocabulary. There was about 85 of them. And he incorporated using ChatGPT, a voice module that actually read the words and kind of read the words in audio form. And when he puts the sentences together, then it actually reads it back into his son's voice. So it can go something like this, where he reads the word what, he reads the word all, and if he reads the word all incorrectly, it will create a sentence out of ChatGPT, and it will go to the voice module and then create a sentence with the word all in it, and then the child read it back. And so all of these type of interactions, just learning reinforcements. And just like what we saw with Nova, the AI, it gives you positive affirmations, learning, great job, it's okay. So it really changes our interaction overall with technology to make it more humanized for our benefit. And then this is pretty much everything I wanted to show you all today. Do you have questions?
Thank you so much for this presentation. Really, really appreciate it. I'm going to take down your slides there. It's been a wonderful overview. What are you most excited about coming down the pipe here over the next 12 to 18 months in AI and yourself?
So I'm in technology, so I track these things. And I would say in the fall, there were 80 AI companies out there that solely focused on AI. And about 2 weeks ago, there's 8,000 companies out there that's focused on AI. So some smaller companies may have pivoted their business plans because, AI is such a hot, important thing right now. But in reality, I bet there's more than 8,000 companies that is actually going to do something with AI, because think about all the existing companies out there, all the existing brands that they are also tinkering. So all of a sudden, I think that this is one of the biggest kind of like avalanche trends that we have not seen in a long time, because it is just such an enablement component to it that we have not seen it being accessible. Like other technologies, for example, back in the day where they say, oh, big data, moving to the cloud. Well, other people do that kind of stuff, right? Like I'm the beneficiary of big data and cloud, but I don't personally do anything with that. And I think that with this new trend of large language learning models and things like that, that it actually puts tools in the hands of normal people. And why ChatGPT took off so much, so fast, is that it spoke our language, our human vocabulary, that we can actually become the engineers, that we don't have to learn to do Python code or anything crazy like that, right? I'm just going to tell you exactly what I want to know and how you can help me. So it is a really great equalizing technology when it comes down to it. And then that is why it is spreading so fast. And this is why we all have to learn to play around with it, at least to dabble with it, because it's going to be as ubiquitous as your computer soon.
Fantastic. Edie, thank you so much for this presentation today. I really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule in order to put it together for us. We'll see you around.
Okay, well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much to Edie for rounding out our October session today. I want to thank Catherine Lewis, Marley Lopez, and others who are putting comments over there in LinkedIn right now. Again, a reminder that our Discord server is available to you as well. I'm just going to pull it up on the screen here so you can see it. Shazam. Come over to that Discord server and continue the conversation, right? We've got great conversations that have been going on all morning. We created the server so that they don't have to stop. When I push end on this presentation here for our October session, obviously the conversation will, so quote unquote end on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube. But we want you to come over to Discord. You can ask presenters questions. You can offer resources for people to look at. You can just have kind of cool conversations in our coffee lounge, off-topic things, etc. So please take a moment and come over and join us. And it's quite easy to get there. All you have to do is go to elearnmagazine.com/AIL Discord. Again, that's elearnmagazine.com/AIL Discord. Obviously there's no cost involved or anything like that. If you would also be interested in these presentations, if you didn't have time to check out all three of them, if you joined us late, they are going to be still available for the next 18 hours or so. But if you'd like to, have access to these and also all of the presentations that we did in September, August, July, June, and the ones going forward as well, I encourage you to come over and check out our All Access Pass. Our All Access Pass, again, super affordable. Here you can see, here's Edie's presentation right here. But again, Michael, Vince, Pascal, all of them are available right now. All of the presentations around the near and not so near future, and then also all the presentations around the challenges. And then, as I've mentioned a few times already today, you also get access to all of the presentations from 2022, 2021, and 2020. So huge value for a very little cost. I also want to remind everyone as well that this is not the end of our summit. The summit continues on in November. So on November 29th, you see our presenters up there. Allison, Ryan, Rachel, and Natalie who are going to be presenting. Natalie Monbois, Ryan Baker, Rachel Liu, and Allison Powell. Ooh, almost forgot her name. So, and Allison Powell, pardon me. Four great presenters, three presentations, four great presenters that we're going to be talking about. I'm just going to give you the titles right now. We're going to be talking about creating virtual twins. That's what Natalie Monbois is going to be talking about, and scaling on-demand learning. Ryan Baker and Rachel are going to be talking about how they've used ChatGPT as a virtual TA in their college classroom today, and kind of the feedback they've received and what they're learning from that. And then Allison will be talking about how to personalize learning through AI. And she runs something called DLAC Conference, and has this really nice overview, and has had this nice overview of sort of the online learning space for a very long time. And that's a fantastic presentation as well. That's about all we have for you today. I really appreciate everyone who has joined us. Thank you so much for sticking around. I can see there's still some people in the chat here. Thank you so much. Please do come over, check us out over at OpenLMS, and obviously also elearnmagazine.com. Check out that Discord one more time. And other than that, have a wonderful day.